Hello and welcome to this week's Rocksmith Developer Stream. I am your host and the community developer for Rocksmith, Doug Lilly. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope we can excuse our absence last week as we just wanted to sort of keep the airwaves a bit more clear. But today we'll have some things to talk about. If this is the first time joining us, first off, thank you for being here. We're glad you're here, and I hope we get to chat some throughout the stream. What we do, right now what we're doing is we're taking a look at some music from members of our community. We are looking at some lessons and other information from people on our staff, and bookending all of that, we are live talking about music, about what's going on in music, and we're going to have some giveaways throughout the streams like normal. Those will come a little bit later, so stay tuned for those. But right now, I'm very excited to introduce our guest for today. We have with us a new member to the Rocksmith editorial team, Dr. Margaret Jones. So please, everyone, if you would, say hello to Marge, which I have the honor of calling her. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I'm glad I can hear you. So first off, welcome to the stream. So this is your first time here.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Good. I'm very glad to have you. Let's talk about it right now. So yeah, last week we took the week off from the stream, and while I was not doing the normal work that I would on a Thursday, you were very busy writing one of the articles that we've been putting on the Rocksmith.com news site.
Yes,
yeah.
It was quite the project, but I think it was a very necessary and worthwhile one.
And what's the name of the article? Do you remember?
The name of the article is "Listen to the Message," and the takeaway from it is that music can inspire change, but we are the ones that have to do the work to bring it about.
Okay. So yeah, it's very pertinent to what's going on in the world right now, and I encourage all of you. You can go to rocksmith.com/news to take a look at it. We may have a link in the chat as we're talking about it. So I just wanted to get that sort of in the air so that people knew kind of what we're going to talk about today in today's conversation. But first, Marge, let's talk a little bit about you. So you have a doctorate in music history.
Yes, that's correct.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I finished my PhD last year at UC Berkeley. I studied music history and literature, which is their version of what's also referred to as musicology. It's a fairly specialized degree depending on how you complete it. My specialization was in 17th century music. I'm a guitar player. I've been playing guitar since I was, like this tall. So like I didn't get to 17th century music in just a straight line. The reason I wanted to play guitar was because I heard Eric Clapton playing the guitar solo in Layla when I was 10 years old, and I was like, what's that? How do I do that? But as I went through grad school, I became interested in actually a lot of the things that Rocksmith is like. It seems like Rocksmith is kind of like the modern day version of, which is like, how did people learn how to play instruments like the lute? In like times before the internet, before like the widespread availability of teachers. Like, not that there weren't teachers, but they were expensive and you had to be pretty upper crust to have access to them. So like, how did you learn how to play? So like, that's kind of where my project went. And that's what makes me, so glad to be here with Rocksmith now, because it feels like we're sort of crafting the next chapter of learning that way.
Thank you for saying that. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of the passing on of, I guess, musical information. That's what we're talking. We're talking about musical ideas that you're transferring from person to person. Let's talk about your focus, the 17th century.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So mostly upper crust people had access to teachers, and right before the stream, you showed off something. If we could take a look at this, this book you've got.
Yeah, so the fun thing about the time period I studied was that you get to look at books like this. I'm just opening it to a sort of random page, but like the 16th and 17th centuries were the time when like paper was finally affordable, so you could get books that were still expensive, but you could buy them. And as just a what we now think of as like a middle class household. And I'm realizing that in the stream, you probably can't actually see all of it. Let's see. We try to move it. There we go. So you'll notice that there's music kind of pointing in every direction on this book. And the idea was that you could, as a group of friends, lay it flat on a table and sit around it. And there's music that points in each direction so that you can read your part.
So
And
instead of having like a music stand with everybody sort of in a, because I'm envisioning this as what I'm sort of familiar with as far as like chamber music ensembles, like just small like brass, like 4 to 5 players maybe. In that case, it looks like 3. Probably.
I mean, this was the original party music. Like you'd have friends
Right.
over for dinner. After dinner was done, you'd clear the dishes away, and then out would come the table book. And everybody, yeah, the parts were generic enough that like if you sang, you could sing them. If you played an instrument, you could play them. And just it was whatever you had. And but there's some really cool things about it because like especially like I don't know, we're thinking about it in terms of COVID-19 now. Maybe this is not the best way to do it anymore, but everyone was like the book was defining the music making space.
Right. It was offering a shared language to anyone who was able to participate. So people, I guess if we're going to talk about the same era, if we're going into folk music, maybe people who didn't have that same access, are you able to tell us a little bit about how the musical concepts were shared in those circles?
Yeah, for sure. We know I mean, we definitely know a lot. We know less about music making in like folk circles, in like not like middle lower class is not what we think of now, but you know, with people with less money. So that would be passed down largely in an oral tradition. As books became less expensive, more people learned how to read music and circulated things in print. But there are a lot of records of how musical instruments were like these focal points in places that you wouldn't necessarily expect, like barbershops. So there would be a lute hanging on the wall in a barbershop. You'd go to get your hair cut or, you know, get your blood let if you were sick, because barbers were also surgeons at that time. Like all sorts of different activities going on in the barbershop. But it was also a place that was like a social forum where, you know, someone would come in, start playing the lute, and then someone would start gossiping about politics. And, you know, everybody sort of converged on these places because there were a few musical instruments there. Yeah. And a lot of the songs that they were singing are written down. That we don't know the music for them, but we know what the lyrics were, because those were documented. And a lot of them are really political. They would reinvent the lyrics to tell the news of what was going on elsewhere in the world.
Right. So you have these familiar melodies, these familiar themes, and then you'd sort of overlay new topics on top of it. And I guess this song would just sort of change. Would that? And I guess at this point, it would be difficult to know if that ever sort of changed the timbre of the music itself, depending on what the context of the lyrics were.
It definitely changes the message. There were times like after the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre where like the French Huguenots were basically wiped out in a matter of about 2 weeks, probably. The way the news reached England about that was through popular songs. And definitely, like, if the song had fairly pedestrian generic lyrics going in, I don't think that the emotional timbre of the music would be the same going forward. I don't know how much it would have changed the way it was sung, but these are because we can't go ask them.
And these songs are traveling pretty great distances, I assume, right?
Yes.
So and that would probably, I assume, influence the musical performance part of those songs, possibly. I'm speculating all over the place. It's something I do.
We kind of have to, because, you know, we can't go ask anybody because they've been dead for 400 years. So
right.
So we definitely, it's not an option on the table. But there were differences in performance practice by region. So, you know, people would know these familiar tunes and they'd put lyrics to them, and that would probably change how they sounded from place to place.
Sure. Interesting. Okay. Well, we have a lot of video content. We have a lot to talk about. So before we head to our first performance and our first giveaway, first I want to say if you have any questions, for Marge, for me about Rocksmith, about sort of music history, maybe we can answer some of those. Later on the stream, Marge and I are going to talk about the article that was recently posted, and we're going to talk about protest music sort of generally. So real quick, I know it seems like a simple question, but how would you define protest music?
It's not
totally on its face.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably not as simple a question, like simple an answer as it is a question. I think a lot of it depends on context, but protest music is music that's made in protest, but that can take a variety of different forms. Like two quick examples, we could look at a band like Rage Against the Machine, that where the lyrics are quite overt about the political stakes of what they're singing about. Or we could look at someone like Shostakovich writing during the height of the Cold War, with police looking over his shoulder and being censored left and right, and then he writes his Fifth Symphony, and musicologists still speculate about whether he was sticking it to the government or whether he was complying with the censorship. And because it's instrumental music, you can argue it in either direction.
Right. So that's an interesting topic. Censorship of purely instrumental music. So is that just an entity sticking to a designated form? Is that mostly what we're talking about?
Yeah. So at the height of like that time period, there was a minister for culture in the Soviet Union, and Zhdanov, and like Zhdanovshchina was his proclamations for like how music was supposed to sound, and it was very much like stylistic stuff. And so if you deviated from what they determined to be the best and good music for the country, then you could face censorship, even for stuff that had no overt political message in it. Right. So, he wrote something that sort of like teetered on the edge. And so like musicologists point to him and go like, aha, see, he's he's going as close to the line as he can, and everyone understood that. And then there are people who were like, oh, he's going as close to the line as he could to like express himself, but he was still behaving himself.
Right. Interesting. That is a fun argument. I think that's a fun discussion that I would have. Nothing worthwhile to talk about, but thank you very much for bringing it up. It's really good. So yeah, let's right now. We're going to be talking about protest music after the break. Right now, we are going to have our first giveaway of the stream. So Marge, we will see you in just a few minutes. Everyone else. Talk to you soon. Everyone else, if you would like to enter for your chance to win one of everything that you see on your screen, probably right about now, please listen to UB Jurassic in the chat. That is Brian Turner. He is our community manager based in North Carolina. He will tell you how you can win our first Ernie Ball prize pack of the day. A lot of you probably know this, but we are still not in the office, so we are holding on to your names and information. And once we are back in the studio, we will be sending out all of the prizes that we have accumulated, or all of the prize winners that we have accumulated, and sending out those boxes as soon as we can. If you win, you're going to get everything that you see here. It's going to be 2 sets of strings, regular Slinky, one for your 6-string guitar, one for your bass. You're going to get a black Ernie Ball guitar strap, a dozen picks for Ernie Ball, 3 Spectrum Plectrum picks from us here at Ubisoft San Francisco. You're also going to receive a package of Ernie Ball Wonder Wipes and a peg winder. All of that coming from Ernie Ball, straight, by way of us to you. So good luck on that. And again, please feel free to enter. After the raffle, if you have any questions, once more for Marge or myself, please let UB Jurassic know, and he'll get those questions to us. And right now, we are going to take a look at our first performance for the day. We are going to say hello once more to Elliot Rudner. That is Toymachinesh. I believe I saw him in the chat earlier. Hey, Elliot, how's it going? And after he plays, we are going to take a look at a new, I think our last stream, we had an unboxing for Brian Turner's first electric guitar. And today we're going to see an unboxing for one of Rykin's mini guitars, but his newest is where we're going to take a look at. So please stick around for that. And after that, I'll be back with another giveaway and we'll talk some more. Here's Toy
Hey
Machine.
everyone, it's Elliot here, also known as Toymachinesh. I run the Riff Repeater along with Allison Cruz, who plays the videos, in case you don't know. I've been playing Rocksmith since day one. I started on guitar and then I switched to bass for quite a bit because I figured I kind of knew how to play guitar a bit and bass was completely foreign to me. Today I'm going to play two songs for you. The first one is called Stupid by The Birthday, and it's a very different song than what I'm used to in Rocksmith. It's almost like a proto-punk, like a bit gothy of a song, and it's in E-flat standard. So usually I would use a drop pedal, but I decided for this song that I would actually tune down to it so I can really feel it, you know? It's a pretty cool song. It has a lot of variation in it. There's some parts that I play well, there's some parts I play not so well. I hope you enjoy it. And this song was a Japanese single that came out in 2014, along with two other Japanese bands. So you saw Acid Man, that Casey played on that stream. And there's also Rise Paradox Taiso. I've never seen anyone really play that song. There's like a lot of songs in Rocksmith that I don't really see people play, so I figured that I would show this one to you and hopefully you enjoy it. Alright.
You're gonna be a superstar.
All right, so here we are unboxing my brand new Comans GCS1 I just ordered. And I've already got it out of the packing box and all. So let's crack this baby open. Curious about the finish because I've only seen it in a photo and was wondering how dark it is. The finish, that is. Okay. Well, there you have it. This is Violin Burst. Yeah, it is a little bit lighter than I thought, but actually I think it looks quite nice. That looks killer. Yeah, nice flame there. Flame top, which is a good feature. This is not the most expensive guitar in the world. Like a player's guitar, so it's not thousands and thousands of dollars that makes you not want to ever use it and just leave it on your wall all day. You can't really see the flame that well. Oh, there it is. Thing is nice. The pickguard's a little scratched up, but there's actually a stick plastic on top of that. Sweet. Let's take a closer look at the back. These tuners look like they're good quality as well. Yeah, solid. Good turn ratio, fine tunability. I'm gonna go ahead with the little bit of a playthrough demo here. Got my Mesa Lone Star on 15-watt bedroom mode, and I'll just go through the pickups. This is the brand new Comans GCS1. It's got a great, like, clean blues and jazz. It's going to be a great jazz guitar. All right, so that was neck. Beautiful clean tone. Let's do middle. Yeah. Okay. Bridge. Now we got some split, sort of more of a funk setting. We're splitting the bridge right now. So that's a cool funk tone. I mean, for the bridge position, it's typically more of a neck. It's got a lot more bottom. Alright, enough of that noodling. I got work to do. It's been a pleasure though. This is going to be a really great addition to my guitar collection, and it's already getting smudged up. So there you have it, people. First playthrough, Comans GCS1. Sweet.
And welcome back to the live portion of today's stream. If everybody could do me a favor, don't tell Ryken how good of a guitar player he is. I don't know what would happen if he knew how good he truly is at guitar. Thank you, Rye, for showing off your new guitar, baby. And thank you, Elliot, for the first performance. We're gonna have another one from Elliot in just a moment. But right now, let's have our song giveaway of the day. And why not kind of stick with a theme? If you want one of 5 copies of the Rage Against the Machine Song Pack 2, we are giving those away in the chat right now. So once more, please listen to what UB Jurassic tells you in the chat for your chance to win one of 5 copies of Rage Against the Machine 2 on Steam. Coming up right after that, we are going to, like I said, we're going to hear from Elliot once more, Toymachinesh SH. He's going to play some Spoon. After that, we are going to see a lesson from Brian Shu about the minor 6th pentatonic scale. And after that, we'll be back with Dr. Marge, Dr. Margaret Jones, to talk more about protest music. So stick around, and if you have questions, maybe after the raffle, hit up UB Jurassic with those, and we'll ask what we can. So here is Elliot Redner once more.
The next song I'm going to play is Me and the Bean by Spoon. This is a Rocksmith 1 import, so it's one of the 52 songs that you get if you choose to import Rocksmith 1 into Rocksmith 2014. You probably should do that, because, you know, by now you should have done it. It's one of my favorite bass lines, actually, in Rocksmith. The fact it's easy to approach, and it's a fairly impactful bass line. It's also one of those bass lines that kind of does something totally opposite from what the guitar is doing in the song. And also, I mean, I've played it so many times, but I decided to play it without a pick and sacrifice my 100% just for you, the viewers. So hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully you agree that it's one of the 20 songs on Rocksmith that you definitely need to try on bass. That's a little plug for an article. Alright, later. Wash your hands.
There's a girl in my yard reading to me tarot cards. She don't know anything, but she's beautiful to me. And whoa,
Masterful performance.
Hey y'all, it's Brian again with another lesson, and today we're going to be talking about how to make your blues playing sound a lot more authentic. And we're just going to make a variation to our normal A minor pentatonic scale. We're going to be playing over a blues, and the A minor pentatonic scale sounds like this, in case you don't know. Pretty standard. You guys probably all know that already. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify that scale and take the fifth note of it, which is a G, and we're going to bring it down a half step to an F sharp. To an F sharp. And that will sound like this. We're going to skip the G and then go straight back to another A. So this is called the minor six pentatonic. Even though there's a major six in it, it's a minor pentatonic because of the minor third. And then we're going to basically do another octave, and that would look like this. instead of this. And I'll spell out the notes really slowly for you guys so you can try it out. Starting on the low E string, it's the 5th fret, 8th fret, and then the 5th fret on the A, 7th fret on the A, 4th fret on the D, which is, there's our major 6. Back to another 7th fret on the D string, which is A, and then it repeats. 5 7, 5 7 instead of 5 8. So that's really cool. And the cool thing about using that note, the F sharp, instead of the G, is that it actually outlines the chord progression in a way better way. So that F sharp is present in as a really strong tone in all 3 chords of a blues. In this case, we have an A7, and in the A7, if we play that F sharp, that's actually the major 6 or the 13. Okay. Over the D7, we're actually emphasizing the 3rd. Which is a super strong chord tone. Like in any given chord, you know, your strongest sounds are probably going to be the root, 3rd, and the 5th. Those are the sounds that define the chord. And then if we are just playing in that position, we have the 2nd degree, or the 9th, of the E7. And that's just one small change. Yeah, like it's really awesome. Like if we're just talking about theory a little bit more, with the G over the G works pretty well over the A7, right? Because that's your flat 7 that kind of defines the dominant tonality of that tune, or of that chord. Over the D7 and E7, though, it's a far weaker note, actually. Because over the D, it's a 4th. So it doesn't quite define that chord as well. Over the E, it's not even in that chord. If anything, it's kind of a wrong note, right? But I mean, it works regardless. I mean, it turns it kind of into a Jimi Hendrix sounding chord if you add the G in there. Okay, cool. So what happens if we just play that scale over the entire chord progression? Here, I'll demonstrate real quick. I'll just play the scale up and down for the whole 12 bars, and you can kind of hear what that sounds like. So that's awesome. It just sounds really smooth across all of those chords. There's one additional thing that we can do with that scale that could be interesting for some of you guys that are a little bit more advanced, where you can actually take that scale shape, the A minor 6 pentatonic, and move it up a whole step whenever you hit the E7 chord. And that will outline that chord in a really nice way, because then you're basically doing the same thing that you're doing to the D7 chord. You're really outlining that, all the chord tones in E7 when you play that scale up there. So let's try that again. I'll demonstrate for you guys real quick over this A7 backing track. So here's the A minor 6. Over the D7, we're still playing that. And then now we're going to move that up a whole step. And then I moved it down. Move it up a whole step. So cool. Hope you guys like that. It definitely brings a lot of attitude into your blues playing. It makes it a bit more complex sounding, just a bit more colorful. So have fun with that, and see you next week.
And welcome back to the live portion of today's Rocksmith Developer Stream. I remain your host and community developer, Doug Lilly. And I want to say a very special thank you to Brian Shu and Rye Kin for showing us a lesson and your pretty rad new guitar. And a very special thanks to Elliot Rudner, that is Toymachinesh, for his 2 performances of some, I think I saw the word hidden gems in there, and that's a good phrase. Those are good songs. And he did a wonderful job playing him. Toymachinesh is where you can find him on Twitch streaming. That is also where you can find him on Twitter. He also runs theriffrepeater.com. So that's all sort of fan-run news about Rocksmith. So theriffrepeater.com, and they have a YouTube page. So just look on YouTube for The Riff Repeater. There should be a link probably in the chat anytime now. I know Toy's in the audience. Hey, Elliot, feel free to link whatever you need to. And right now, let's say hello once more to Dr. Jones. Marge, welcome back.
Thank you.
I got it right that time. I didn't. So before we kind of get into it, I do have a couple questions from the chat that I want to hit you with. First, can you tell us about the ES335 behind your wall? That's from Clutching Up.
It's a Guild Manhattan X170.
Okay.
I got it secondhand the year before I went to college to study music. And it was my big aspirational purchase, because I thought I was going to become like the best jazz guitar player, and that never happened. I still play it all the time. I love it. I'm not that great of a jazz guitarist. And then that guitar. Let's see, am I pointing at it right? Yeah. You can't.
It might not be on screen. With
it's not on screen. I ended up studying classical guitar. That's what happened. So yeah. But I do still play it. I put flat wounds on it, and it sounds lovely. Everything's stock, so I wish I could say I've done lots of cool mods on it, but that one's untouched.
Cool. Yeah, my guild is the one that Dan Emmerich set up for low tuning. It is not semi-hollow though, for what that's worth. Another question from Got the Luck Virus. So we're talking a lot about lutes today. I think most people have probably heard of a lute, or maybe I'm assuming that because I've played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. What makes a lute a lute? How do you sort of what is a lute? Like
So,
what are the features?
That's a great question. So the lute is a fretted instrument that dates back at least to the Middle Ages, probably before. If you know the oud, it has a body shape very similar to that. It's like the teardrop shaped round back. Some mandolins have that profile too. It has frets. Those frets are, rather than being strips of metal, they're tied on. Historically, they were made of gut, just like the strings.
Okay.
And but they were, nowadays we use nylon or like other synthetic materials mostly. You can read tablature for it, similar to guitar. The difference being that most of the time, well, depending on, there are two main systems of tablature that you can read. One of them uses letters in place of numbers, but otherwise it's functionally the same as modern guitar tablature. And then the other one uses numbers, but the strings are reversed. So it's a trip. If you're used to reading guitar tablature, the low E string, instead of being at the bottom, is at the top.
So more like our interface, or with our default interface with the low E at the top.
Yes, actually.
Interesting.
That's true.
So actually, that's something I've thrown my speculation, my theory before, that tablature is made the way it is with the low E on the bottom to make it more in line with sort of traditional Western notation. Do you know if I'm right? I like being right.
I don't have the smoking gun.
Okay.
But I think that's safe to say.
Okay.
Because there was a point in history where everything was referred to as tablature, like even what we now talk about as standard notation. Mm-hmm. So and tablatura actually just means table, like a chart. So if you think about how standard notation works versus how tablature works, you're basically writing a chart of the notes no matter what you're doing. So
that makes a whole lot of sense. So, and Gather Luck Virus was sort of asking with the lute, like how is it different from a mandolin? Like, are the strings doubled like how I think a mandolin works, if I remember correctly?
Yes, they are. It's tuned similarly to the guitar, except the third is, in conventional tunings, the third is one string further down. So rather than going like E, A, D, G, B, E, it would go like, usually not tuned to E, but it would be like E, A, F sharp, A, D. I'm just screwing it up. I'm thinking about it two different ways. But yeah, the third, if you use like the fifth and fourth frets to tune, you do it one string sooner.
Okay.
Yeah, and the strings are doubled. The lower strings are an octave apart, so you get like a low E and then like the next E up together, and then the high strings are doubled. And the highest string is single, and that's where you play most of the melody lines. So it just makes it easier to pluck and play things quickly.
And is it traditionally plucked? Like, what's your what I would call, I guess, your strumming hand doing?
It depends.
Usually.
It depends. Historically, in the Middle Ages, they had these giant plectrums, like modern day picks, and they would strum rather than plucking. In the Renaissance, you had this weird sort of technique where instead of like guitar, you kind of pluck like this. But in the Renaissance, you sort of like your thumb tucks under and you kind of pluck the strings like that.
Okay.
So it's really weird to switch if you played guitar forever and then you try to just pick it up and play it. From my modest experience with trying to actually play it not like it's a guitar, it does change the sound a little bit, and it is a little bit louder and easier to control how it sounds like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a learning curve.
Understood. Understood. All right. Well, I think it's time. Let's get into it. So we were talking about protest music. Once more, if you just joined us partway through the stream, we have Dr. Jones here. This is Margaret Jones. A big reason. Well, we had a couple reasons for having you on with us today. One, to introduce you to our community. Two, because we just published today on our website, rocksmith.com/news, an article about protest music, specifically current, like 2020 protest music about what's happening now in our world. So with that said, and we sort of gave a bit of a definition as much as you can, because it's not a genre really.
Yeah.
It's a category of music that can go in different genres. So as you were researching for this article, what were some of your key takeaways, both personally and as an academic?
So personally, I think the main takeaway that I've had is just the weight of the history of protest music, especially with regard to civil rights in the United States. There hasn't been a time when we haven't been writing songs about this. So while, we can see points in history where the needle does legitimately shift, at the same time, the lyrics of stuff that was written in the 60s feels just as relevant today as it was in the 1960s. And that's heavy.
Right.
Right. So, that was something that I'd always kind of, I've known, but writing the article kind of really drove it home, just pulling the examples out of each decade. And it really is each decade of how long this fight has been ongoing.
So you have people with concern who are saying the same thing decade after decade, just with modern language, with the sort of language and music of the day.
And it cuts across genres. There is no genre that is isolated from protest music.
Right.
It's it's responding to what's happening in that time. So things that maybe don't even feel like protest music anymore were protest music in their day.
Right. That's true. Yeah, that's. I guess you could look back at things. Perhaps there are issues that we're not currently facing, that we're very in the moment, and we might not really recognize them as protest music unless they're famously known for being protest songs.
Or there are like labor rights anthems like "Which Side Are You On," which you still sing them when you're on strike, but it doesn't, like, the issues that are on the table at any given moment may be more specific to a specific plight that's being exactly.
Sure.
So it's fluid. There's no one moment where it's just like, aha, we found it, this is the protest music. Here we go.
And as far as if you were willing to sort of say, in your opinion, what elements of a song or methodologies seem to make for an effective protest song? And for the sake of this conversation, I'm defining effective as being able to convey a specific message and or inspiring action or thought or conversation in the listener.
I think there are three things I noticed in this particular moment of different kinds of music that work different ways as protest music. And it depends on where you're listening and like how you're listening. And the first is, if you're marching, having something that everybody can sing or something that everybody can move to seems to be really important. A song like "We Shall Overcome," everybody knows the lyrics. It's very powerful to be in a crowd of thousands of people singing the same thing. It's how you can build solidarity. And then there's recorded music where I think a lot of what I've seen in music that's come out in the last 2 weeks, especially in hip hop and R&B, where lots of sampling happens, is that the samples that are put to use are actually like sort of the evidential like recordings of interactions with law enforcement. So in a way, the song then like further amplifies whatever the evidence is. It's not even like necessarily the message, it's the evidence. And then the third would be sort of the most nebulous of the three, which would be, sort of the what do we do now? And that's where it gets like I was on a personal level, I was kind of afraid that we were gonna get some like feel good, star-studded anthem for like
Yeah.
positive change, and I don't think I've seen one happen. But there is another important part of protest music where it can move things forward, and sometimes it's just imagining a better future and trying to put that into words. So yeah, those are
Kind of
the three things I noticed this time around.
Describing maybe a collective mindset or a collective set of thoughts that we can just consider with one another and be able to have those conversations. And to the second point, where you were talking about using samples from real life happenings, I suppose if you're not really paying attention to lyrics, you might not be a lyric person, but that's going to draw your attention, I guess. And maybe at that point you start, okay, what are these people saying? What's being said in the song that I might not have picked up on if it wasn't sort of made as evident. Thank you. And I imagine.
So like the example of like Terrace Martin's Pig Feed, if you haven't had a chance to click through to the embedded videos in the article, like it opens with the sound of gunshots. So like that sets you off your like normal rhythm from the get-go, and then you're immersed in the message. So sonically, I've seen a lot of songs that do some version of that. And, it's also very telling that, each song uses a different recording.
Yeah, right. That
there's lots of material to draw from.
Yeah. Good. I imagine maybe before reading the article, maybe at some point in your life, you sort of, if you think about protest music, you get certain stigmas, you get certain perceptions and assumptions in your head. What might we look at the concept of protest music and take away some of those assumptions, some of those stigmas? I think because like me personally, just to use myself as an example, when I think of protest music, I'm typically either thinking of 1960s Woodstock or I'm thinking of Rage Against the Machine. That's sort of where my mind goes. And then there's a lot of sort of nebulous, kind of going back to the more feel good, like let's hang out and be better together kind of music that I think has a very specific stigma attached to it.
Yeah, I think with the stigma, it's definitely kind of like a lot of protest music feels, or it can feel like kind of an empty gesture where like everybody gets together and they make this big statement and, they raise a couple $1 million for a good cause, and then everybody pats each other on the back and says, we did it, good job. And then everybody goes home and everybody forgets. And I think what I was hoping to assemble in this particular article was a lot of different kinds of music that didn't necessarily do that. Not all of it's, negative. Not all of it is, speaking specifically to like the events that have happened in the last couple weeks. But I think it does require a certain amount of engagement with the lyrics in addition to the music, at least with what I was putting in the article. And that's also why we lifted the lyrics and put them in the block quotes, because it is important that the lyrics speak louder than my words, especially. But I think part of it is that it's easy in hindsight to kind of not like discredit, but like devalue the weight of a protest song in its moment, especially if it's catchy and danceable. Because it's easy enough to not think about what the content is actually in the song. So, if I have any advice, it's just to like take the time and look up the lyrics. Like I know not everybody, can catch the lyrics the first time around listening to a song, but take the time to look them up. It's 2020 and the internet's a thing. So, what are these songs actually about? And I think if I've seen anything on the internet in the last couple days, a lot of people are realizing that songs that they thought were apolitical are more political than
You're right.
And-
if Twitter's taught us anything.
Yeah, if Twitter's taught us anything. Lots of people listen to songs without really paying attention to the lyrics. So pay attention to the lyrics.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the songs
Every
that
now and
kind
then.
of stick as the political ones are like the touchy-feely, preachy ones. And if it's catchy, which also can help a protest song a lot because then everybody's listening to it. But if it's catchy, there's the risk
Right.
that you don't engage with the message as much.
That's true. Yep. And I have I have a question from the chat that actually is a great follow-up to the sort of last question that I had for this topic right now. So I know when this article started. Hopefully, I'm not telling tales that shouldn't be told. But this article started out very differently. It was more of an extended historic look over several decades at protest music that was condensed to what is happening right now. How vital, how important, and why, if you think it is important, that the method of conveyance for the music that we're talking about right now is what it is, as far as the genre, the method of distribution. So I'm talking about, we're talking about a lot of hip hop and R&B, as you mentioned, probably mostly on streaming platforms.
Yeah.
For access.
I mean, in these last 2 weeks, I mean, that's basically, the streaming is kind of how you get music out quickly now, especially during a pandemic. Like, you can't just go to the record store and pick up the vinyl, and it takes a while to press it and ship it. And I think, like, especially with something like vinyl, like, there's a backlog for pressing it. So, like, really right now, everything's streaming. I would say that the sampling that's in the article is representative but not comprehensive of all the music that's been made in the last few weeks. There is a lot of hip hop, there is a lot of R&B, and I think a lot of that is because those genres of music come out of the communities that are being over-policed. And so people living in those communities, people who came from those communities, people who have family in those communities, feel like that's the language of how they need to respond. And I think that this music hopefully speaks to everybody. It certainly spoke to me.
Great, thank you, Marge. And a follow-up question from, I'm not sure if it's Build or Build D in the chat. If you know, as you were researching this, do you know if there are any artists doing sort of guitar-based protest music in the moment, like right now?
That's a good question.
And if not,
yeah,
if it didn't come up, then it might not.
I'm sure there are. I think
maybe in the chat, some people might have some in the chat.
If people could jump in the chat and speak to that, I'm sure there are. There are plenty of historical examples I can think of, but I'm also trying to pull something directly to mind. Janelle Monáe's article, or Dirty Computer, the Janelle Monáe's visual album, is very guitar heavy. She was working very closely with Prince, I think, up until his death. And so there's a lot of like Prince inflected guitar playing on that album. That's from 2 years ago. So that's not speaking specifically to this moment, but it's speaking to a lot of things that are very much the same as what led up to our current moment. Sure. So if you haven't listened to that album, I definitely recommend checking it out and actually watch it. I think the whole thing's on YouTube. So it's worth watching start to finish.
What can we get the artist's name and the album's name one more time?
Janelle Monáe, Dirty Computer. If you go to the article, it's hyperlinked from the article, so that's an easy way to find it.
All right, Marge, Dr. Jones, thank you very much for being here. This has been a pleasure. And I think we are going to have our final giveaway, and we'll say goodbye. So it's been great having you here. And if you want to say farewell to the chat.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. I'll jump down into the chat for a second and catch you next time.
All right. Thank you very much, Marge. And for everybody else in the chat who is live with us right now, we are giving away our second Ernie Ball prize pack of the day. So if you're in the chat, please listen to UB Jurassic for your instructions on how you can win everything that is now on your screen. You're going to get 2 sets of strings. That is a 6-string set, as well as a 4-string set for your bass, both regular slinky. You're going to get a dozen picks from Ernie Ball, plus 3 Spectrum Plectrum picks from us here at Rocksmith. You're going to get a black Ernie Ball guitar strap, a package of Ernie Ball Wonder Wipes, and a peg winder. All of that can be yours. Thank you, Ernie Ball, for getting us these gifts to pass along. And once more, we will be shipping those out once we can return to the studio. So we will hold on to that information and get that to you. If we have any problems, we'll reach out in the future. We do ship internationally, and if you are outside of the U.S. and you win, please just make sure you split up your address line by line to make it that much easier for me to get the information to you. So once more, I want to say thank you very much to Margaret Jones, Dr. Margaret Jones, for being here as my guest on the stream. I wanted to say thank you to Elliot Rudner, aka Toymachinesh, theriffrepeater.com, for his great performances and pulling in some maybe lesser known songs from the catalog. Those were a lot of fun to listen to. Also want to say thank you to Rai Kin and Brian Shu for setting up some demonstrations of the new guitar and a lesson. And I want to say thank you as well to Brian Turner for managing the chat, Dan Amrick for managing the board ops, and thank you very much to all of you for being here after our week off. Glad to be back. Glad to see you all, and we will see you next week. Thank you very much.